All right, guys. Hi, my name's Zachary Crawford, and this is my Wayfinding project. So starting things off, a couple works that have inspired me, and the first one I would like to talk about is a song by the Westerlies called "A Nearer Sun." This is a jazz song that I found through collecting a record randomly. I was drawn to the record because it was painted with acrylics and it was just a really pretty red barn. Um, but the song has kind of stand the test of time as helping me get over some creative blocks. And there's a pinnacle in the song that's the climax that always helps me kind of like think of a new scenario that I can put that in film or in a song or draw inspiration from. But there's this moment where this trumpet and trombone are just yelling at each other, and it comes to a head in this moment of build up and silence that I think as an artist is important to remember that the lack of space or the emptiness that you can leave in a song, in a phrase, in a scene, can sometimes be more impactful than filling it as full as possible. And I think that that's something I try to draw inspiration from in work that I do. The next work that really has inspired me is a piece from the musical Sweeney Todd called A Little Priest, written by Stephen Sodenheim. He was an amazing writer and creative in the musical theater world who really challenged a lot of ideas that had been established in theater. Previously in the musical world, everything, had resolutions that were concrete and they were happy go lucky stories that everyone came and they listened to and they had a good time and they left. Now, what Sodenheim did with the musical world and over the course of the 70s was really flip ideas on their head and show that musicals can be about life and be more about what's happening in the world. So Sodenheim produced his masterwork at the end of the 70s called Sweeney Todd, or in my opinion, what's a masterpiece. And this this show does a lot to really emphasize some key areas of what it means to be human and what it means to have internal turmoil, and puts them in the most bizarre light that really is staggering in a musical world. And this was the first time that a musical in this genre had been produced, which is a thriller musical. And for those of you unfamiliar with Sweeney Todd, the premise of the show is a man called Sweeney Todd is returning to London after being expelled and outcast, and is coming back with a vengeance. And he was a barber, and he has a list of people who had done him wrong, and he wants to kill them. And this is where he meets his accomplice, Mrs. Lovett, who owns a bakery. And they team up, and they have this idea, or Mrs. Lovett has this idea where, the it's really hard to get meat in London right now, and everybody's serving like these like random meat that's old and rotten. And she comes up with the idea of, why don't we use people? And the idea starts off with, let's use a little priest.
Business needs a lift, debts to be erased. waste. Think of it as thrift, as a gift, if you get my drift. No? Seems an awful waste. I mean, with the price of meat, what it is, when you get it, if you get it. Oh. Good you got it. Here we are then. Hot, out of the oven.
What is that?
It's priest. Have a little priest.
Is it any good?
Sir, it's too good, at least. Then again, they don't commit sins of the flesh, so it's pretty fresh.
Awful lot of fat.
So what you see is this exchange of this very bizarre banter between the two of them, and then this leads to a competition of them essentially trying to come up with the best idea, and they go back and forth with this playful banter about a very dark subject until evidently Mrs. Lovett sticks him with a rhyme that has never been rhymed on Broadway. And this just is a remarkable feat of appreciation from my behalf, because not only is it clever writing and clever musical and challenging the systems that are in place, it makes fun of what Broadway has always done and traditions that will still be there. And to this day, Locksmith has still never been rhymed on Broadway.
Well, now, what have I got here? I've got Tinker,
Something pinker,
Tailor,
something paler,
Potter,
something hotter,
Butler,
something subtler.
Locksmith.
The last piece of art that has inspired me actually came out less than a week ago by an artist called Alo, and it's called A Tiny Village, and it was made in Blender. And I have always been a 3D artist in the media sense, but this is where I want to go further and get more experience in, and I want to set it in the scale of miniatures and really changing the perception of what it means to use scale, and invoke different feelings of discomfort from people. The nice thing about this work of art is that it's actually comforting. And I don't know why that is the scale to me, but it is something I want to explore more. One of my favorite past works is a piece called The Gambler's Illusion, which is a kaleidoscope that I put two kaleidoscopes back to back and used a clear piece of glass, and then cut a poker chip in half and suspended it to create this illusion of a full poker chip. It was a really interesting project, but it just was a combination of my love for 3D design and metalwork and woodworking, and I tumbled stones and really thought outside the box to create something that was very unique, and it created this special illusion that was interesting to me, and I hope to explore more of the illusion aspect in art moving forward. The next work of art I did was coffee and makeup. This was done, I had a art teacher, Andre, as I've kind of talked about with you guys. He had this old pot that they used to make coffee in from the Civil War. And we would brew this giant vat of coffee, and you'd go over, and depending on the pigment that you wanted to use to paint in was how deep you had to put your arm in the pot of coffee. So if you wanted black, you put your entire arm in, and you scooped up the grounds from the very bottom of the pot, and you went back to your desk and you painted with it. And this out of the box kind of like thinking, and I think it reflects very well like with this class, is using objects and items found around you to create art, and that is also something I want to embody more. The last work of art that I wanted to bring up is this work that I did called Railroad Track with a song from Willie Moon. And this is where I got to really explore extensively in a cinematographer lens of how I wanted to tell a story. It bounces back between black and white and stylism and color depending on the time, where color is represented as the present and black and white is represented as the past, and sin is involved, and it's about a guy cheating on his best friend's girlfriend, and he ends up killing his friend because she goes missing. And it was this really fun project that I got to do and think really outside of the box on how to get some of the shots that we did. Like, we had to do a drone shot at one point, but we didn't have access to drones, so we put the camera on top of my vehicle and drove it very slowly and then sped up the footage, and it created this really cool looking shot from an aerial perspective. That creative thinking is what I want to also continue to embody in my work moving forward as well, and exploring more of that stylism that I got to use in the film production of this video. For future works, I have very specific thoughts and feelings I want people to feel from looking at my artwork. One of the biggest ones is being able to have thoughts of self-reflection and what your role in all of this is. As you've seen in the last piece that has inspired me, it has a sense of scale, and I think our looking at ourselves in a scale that we're not familiar with can have reflection. And I think that the relationship with nature aids to that in what I want to be able to do. And I think that we as humans should be more reflective of ourselves through nature. The feelings that I want to go with is making someone uncomfortable without feeling discomfort. And this is a thin line to walk that I want to kind of narrate in light of Sodenheim and Sweeney Todd. He was doing a very vulgar theme, but telling a really interesting story that had a lot of reflection on the real world and had implementations that had a much greater impact than a lot of people anticipated. The major concepts that I wish to fulfill through my artwork are much in those lights, and comes down to putting your perspective on the world around you by challenging the scale of what you're familiar with and implementing things that you aren't familiar with, and how that makes you feel to see something that you've never seen before. To say I have a lot to learn is quite a bit of an understatement. I need to dive deeper into Blender. I've come from a background of moving digital art and After Effects work, which, although is intense, it is not a still life image. That is a different form of artistry that I really want to learn how to use. And alongside that goes with techniques and artists that I need to follow and dive deeper in and as to how they do things. And that includes modeling and their use of light on different types of objects. When you have something on a miniature scale, they absorb light at a much different wavelength than objects which are bigger. I've done a lot of research on some of these things already, but I will be jumping in kind of blind with these, but looking forward to learning, especially, because these ideas are important to me, and I think that we need more of them in this world. And here is my citation. Thank you, guys.